With the Iowa Lottery's new Millionaire for Life game, you could win $1 million a year for life. That could make you a My Dream Job is No Job-ionaire. A front row tickets to every show-yonaire. A hire a personal glam squad for you and your bestie-yonaire.
Yep, a little further.
Or just to never run out of your favorite pickles-yonaire. With Millionaire for Life from the Iowa Lottery,
And these.
you can change your life for life. Play today.
What is up? Welcome into the Channel Seed Studios for Buckets. I'm Jake Brend, joined by a familiar face, Mark Freund. Freund, this is your third Bucket show?
Three. Lucky three. Here we go.
First for
Came
me,
in
though.
Lipsy, if you will.
Number 3. Is that a good omen for this weekend? It better be.
Let's find out.
I don't want to go home yet. I really don't
Yeah,
wanna
you
go
just
home
got
yet.
there. You just got
I've been
there.
on the road for 4 straight weeks. This is my 4th straight Wednesday out of town, which is kind of crazy. Hopefully, if it hits 6, I'll be happy.
So, okay, so this is worth a vibe check for you, right? Because we know working in TV, right? It's like we used to do the wrestling tournament, then girls state basketball, then boys state basketball, conference tournaments, NCAA tournaments. Like, how's your energy level right now? I know you ditched some of those previous duties, but how's your energy level at this point?
Yeah, I'm tired today, but I'll be good tomorrow. Today is more of a byproduct of waking up at 6 a.m. to drive. You know how it goes. We sleep till 9 or 10 in this job, so I'm good to go, especially once games show up and once I live for I know you know this. You live for the locker room conversations. The press conferences, they get so dull over the year, and the players don't necessarily get to be themselves. Once you actually get into the locker room and get to talk to the players, that's when they're in their element. That's when you get some personality. So I almost get more excited for those locker room interactions like we'll get tomorrow than I do for the game. Because the game just honestly makes me sick to my stomach at this point of the year.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I agree with that, in that, most of the year we would get the players in that press conference setting. And so it's sterile. They're up at a podium in front of a whole room of people looking at them. Like you said, it's just a little more intimate, a little more personal when you can kind of get in the locker room and just get them sitting at their lockers, tying their shoes. Their teammates are next to them, showing them stuff on their phone, joking around with them. So yeah, I do remember that fondly as just it's a little more relaxed.
Well, so we'll get into all of it. Iowa State, men and women, UNI men. We'll talk to Josh Betts. But we're going to start with our Iowa Lottery big money moment. I can't wait. And it's the best week of the year. It's the first weekend of March Madness. And Freund, I'm so interested to hear, maybe not your perspective yet, but after this weekend, what it'll be like not being on the road for the first time since when? COVID? And does that even count?
2018, I believe, at least from a Division I perspective. Because I get COVID. Yeah, we were preparing. Like it was a normal year. I did go down to the Big 12 tournament that year. Iowa State did get a game in that year, but only because they were so bad and they played that first night. But yeah, it'll be a little different. Like I tweeted the other day, I know I'm going to have some FOMO this week, but being able to watch Selection Sunday without having to frantically start making travel plans, and am I
to
going
Buffalo,
booking a flight, or figuring out when I'm going to leave, get in the car to drive like you did 6 hours. I didn't miss that part of it. It was nice to just be able to relax and watch the teams come up with everybody else.
Yeah, for me this year, Selection Sunday was all just draw based. It was number one. I was 95% sure Iowa State was going to be a 2 seed in St. Louis in the Midwest. So number one, it was, okay, can Illinois come off the board before the Midwest? Because that's,
sure.
If Illinois was the 3 seed in the Midwest, I'd be a little bit worried. Then it got to a point where I'm like, are we going to have to deal with a Cy-Hawk game in the round of 32? So when Santa Clara popped up, that was a little relieving. Not because I think Iowa State would beat Iowa handily. So many extra storylines on top of that week. We already know how much good and bad Cy-Hawk Week brings, and it would be
Right.
amplified. So it wasn't as stressful this year, I think, as most years, where it's in local TV, you're kind of looking and wondering, well, if it's in this part of the country, are we even going to go?
Mm-hmm.
How many people can go?
And remember, like, we've had the luxury the last couple of years of like having a really good idea where Iowa State in particular was going to be.
Yeah.
There were a couple of years there, like the one year they landed in Greensboro, and I remember my first year here when they landed in Tulsa, it was kind of like, you're kind of trying to make several potential plans to, depending on where they ended up getting placed, you had branch off options as far as like how you were going to make it all work. So the luxury of knowing or having at least a really good idea of where you were going to be probably made it easier on you.
Yeah, and the thing with Iowa State, especially the fans, because this is what this is about, it's a really interesting draw because Kentucky travels. I mean, we got to the media hotel today, and I swear there were 5 Kentucky TV stations already there, all set up, like bringing in massive loads of equipment. You've got Purdue, which is, I'm not fantastic at my Southern Indiana geography, but I would guess it's not any further to St. Louis from West Lafayette than it is Des Moines. And then, of course, Mizzou's here, too. So the odds are, at least there are really good odds, that you're getting on Sunday Iowa State, Kentucky, Missouri, and Purdue in one spot. And that's a hot ticket. That's going to be a really fun atmosphere. Even if one of those teams, like, I think Miami's a lot better than Missouri. They should win that game regardless of where it's at. But even if it's Miami, Purdue, Iowa State, Kentucky, that's going to be a really good atmosphere, and that's what we live for. This is the best 4 days of the year.
And I know you missed that Valley tournament, so you get a little slice of it being in that building there in St. Louis.
I have never watched a team that I'm covering lose in this building, and I don't know if I count UNI because I came down here to cover Drake. And I was like, since we're here, might as well cover. Actually, no. UNI lost on my way down here last year, so I didn't even cover UNI. They lost to
there you go.
Valpo, I think. It was a bad loss. But yeah, I am 3-0. I've been to the Valley tournament 3 times, and Drake went 3-0 in those times. So we'll see if that continues at the Enterprise Center. So let's just start with Iowa State.
Let's do it.
You get Tennessee State Friday, 1:50 CBS. There's not a ton to be afraid of in that matchup. It's your typical 15-2 matchup. The gap has gotten wider in the past couple of years between these. But is there any Cinderella concern level from you?
No.
Yeah, Pence points out, all right. He was incredible that game against Valpo. I remember
All
that.
right. Yeah, went to Xavier.
What a name.
I'm a big guy, so he kind of tortured my Marquette team a couple of times, but yeah, no concerns getting back to Iowa State. I know Tennessee State's got the one player whose name escapes me right now, who's pretty good, but they're a 15 seed out of what conference? The OVC.
Yeah.
I think with the way Iowa State plays, no, I don't think we're even sniffing any kind of upset alert here.
Yeah, to me it feels like, and this is more of a even bigger picture, not just the 15 seed, but whether it's the 7 or the 10, feels to me if they play the way they're supposed to. And that's not even including making shots. It's not really including luck. If they just play as hard as they should and as hard as they played down in Kansas City, it's really hard to picture a way they don't get out of St. Louis.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we know, so whether it is Santa Clara, I'm not convinced it's going to be, or Kentucky. Iowa State matches up against Santa Clara very well, and Kentucky's an extremely flawed team. This should be a situation where we shouldn't be, fooled by the name Kentucky. They spent a bunch of money on their roster. It hasn't clicked for them, and they've not put it together all year. I don't have any concerns at this point about the way Iowa State gets out of this pod, especially when you consider, because the point you brought up I believe it was on Murph and Andy on Monday, that Iowa State's runs into the most trouble because of them, not because of the opponent. Yeah. Neither of those opponents scare me. So as long as Iowa State is doing what they're supposed to be doing, no concerns from me going forward.
Yeah, and that bridges really well into my Kaburski Brothers lawn care. Planting a seed of a take. It is, I mean, it was snowing. It was blizzarding over the weekend. It was miserable. I don't know how warm it got in Iowa today, but it was about 65, 70 down here in St. Louis. And looking at the forecast, knock on wood, it looks like we're finally here. And there's no better time than right now to hit up the Kaburski Brothers to get to work on your lawn, make your lawn look all pretty for the spring and summer. And if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for work, the Kaburski Brothers would be a great place to do it. My seed of an idea is that Iowa State has so much experience and so many built-up battle scars. Like Taman Lipsey, it's easy to forget his first NCAA tournament game was maybe the worst game in Iowa State basketball history. Maybe not expectations-wise, like you could pretty much easily say that's Hampton or UAB or something like that. But from a pure execution standpoint on the biggest stage, that Pitt game was horrendous. It was so bad to the point where I think I was covering the Iowa women playing a 15 seed that day, and I was frantically planning all day, like, okay, how am I going to find a way to watch Iowa State? How am I going to find a way to watch Iowa State? I'm like, okay, once this game's over, then it'll be 10 minutes in, and I'll be able to watch parts of the game to the point where by the time I could watch, I'm like, I'm not watching it. It's 20-2. Lipsey's had that. Momcilovic had the Illinois game where he cried in the locker room after and blamed himself for the loss. He had a similar thing last year where he just didn't show up against Ole Miss. I feel like all of those things bode well for this year's team from a storytelling perspective, that they've had their struggles in this tournament. They've certainly, like, Momcilovic, I think, gets a bad rap for some of the times he didn't show up. He also showed up big time against Washington State in the round of 32 when they needed him. So I think this team is ready to put it together for 3 or 4 straight games and see what can happen if they get to the moment.
I feel like it's their time to kind of build off, or more succinctly, I guess, say what you just so eloquently said about this team. When you look at the continuity, when you look at the highs, when you look at the way they played at the Big 12 tournament, and I know we've had Iowa State teams who have gone into this thing playing pretty well and coming out of Kansas City feeling all right, only for it to come crashing down. It feels like there's a level of confidence there right now, even after that Arizona game, that this team knows that they not only can but should be right there with anybody in this bracket, anybody in this region, anybody in this bracket. I know a lot was made about the comments that TJ had the other day about, hey, when we're playing this well, we're a Final Four team, and how he doesn't typically say things like that. Curious for you, did you get to meet the team today? That did happen, right?
Yeah. Yep. Talked to TJ, Torre, and Heisey today at the hotel.
Was there more of that vibe did you get, or was it more tempered because, now we got to play the games?
Yeah, the words Final Four weren't thrown out, but
of course.
Torre, I wish you were around, just from a news perspective, to not cover state soccer or anything like that, but to interview Killian Torre. You would have really enjoyed him. He's always a good interview, and he spent a lot of time talking about, I didn't ever watch March Madness growing up, because he's from France and games were happening at 2 a.m. Right. He's like, but what I do know is that it's game by game and the goal is to win a championship, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to help this team win a championship. And I definitely get that sense that everyone's confident. I talked to Heisey after the game on Friday night, and what he said was roles. Like everybody knows exactly what they have to do. And I think I'd have to ask Otzelberger this after the season, but I think there were points where, I mean, we all watched what Torrey did out in Las Vegas. It was unbelievable. Taman Lipsey goes down, and you're thinking in the back of your head, like, does this team need Lipsey? Like, they've got this Torrey guy who not only was unbelievable defensively, he was going and getting 22 points in back-to-back games, and he did it while looking effortless. I think it's really easy for a guy like that to be convinced at that point that this is just going to be that easy. And it hasn't been easy, especially in conference play, but I think he's learned as teams have sagged off on him what he has to do to impact winning, and that's what he did at the Big 12 tournament. I think Heisey is the best example of it, where almost to a fault he doesn't care about scoring. He doesn't. He probably should care about scoring a little bit more. That's what I think I like about this team, is you don't worry about any of those players going into total hero mode, other than maybe Jefferson. But if Jefferson has to go into hero mode, that's usually a bad sign, because it means that nobody else is doing anything right. And as long as Momcilovic is hitting shots, or Bateman or Heisey, like as long as it's not total code red, this team should be completely fine to all play into those roles.
Well, and you have, again, I don't think you can underscore enough how much that experience factor and continuity matters in March, and in an era where teams are turning over pretty consistently. Look at the top teams, right? Yeah. Arizona's got some roster continuity. Iowa State's got some roster continuity. Florida's got some roster continuity. That is so valuable when you get into the late stages of a second round tournament game, a regional semifinal, a regional final, to be able to have guys who have been there, who have, to your point, experienced the dark side of March, to know what it takes to come out on the right side of it. And we always talk about, how Iowa State's got one of the top three or top trios in the country, right? Your top first three, Jefferson, Lipsey, Momcilovic. That doesn't just matter production wise. It matters intangible wise too. And again, all signs seem to point to this team being ready for the moment. More ready than at least that's how it feels to me, more ready than teams of the past have been, even in the good years where, I know we felt pretty good going to Boston a couple of years ago. But this feels different.
Yeah. And even as good as we felt in Boston, I don't think anyone felt like they were leaving Boston. Like it felt like, okay, they can definitely go out and beat Illinois. They probably should beat Illinois. I'd say they win that game 6 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10. But you never expected that team to go beat UConn, especially with what UConn did after that. And it did feel like a house money. Like you go out and beat Houston by 30 in the Big 12 championship. It felt like that team maxed out, or when they came really close to maxing out.
Yeah.
To me, maxing out for this team feels like winning the national championship, which is crazy to say. And that's not to say anything short of that's a failure. Like I think an Elite Eight is an objective success. It'll still probably feel like there's a little bit of meat on the bone if you get to the Elite Eight and lose, but I don't think you can like come into this season losing Keyshawn and Curtis and think anything less than an Elite Eight is some sort of failure, or anything Elite Eight or better some sort of failure. But yeah, it just does feel like they're ready for that moment, and it's now or never. Like Taman Lipsey typically doesn't let this team lose games. Almost all of their losses this year have been blowouts, which is the weird part, where it didn't feel like they had a shot in the final minute, and it didn't feel like Taman was going to let them lose that Arizona game until Jaden Bradley got the ball back last, and that.
Right.
You think that Taman, almost maybe to his detriment of the future of his health and well-being, is not going to let this team lose a game, even if it involves diving into the fourth row to get a ball.
Right. That said, what do you want to see in these first couple of games to make you feel good about everything that we've just said? That because it does look like this region is well set up for Iowa State to to make a run to the Elite Eight, if not further. What do you want to see in these first couple games that would make you feel good about that?
There's not even anything results-wise other than wins, of course. I just want to see them play like they did in Kansas City. It doesn't – you don't have to go and make 12 threes. You don't have to beat the 16 seed by 50 like you beat Arizona State. But if you go out with that same ball pressure, and that's something that when you're in the building, you can tell, like, okay, like Iowa State's always playing hard, but there's some times where Iowa State is playing, wow, like they could maybe guard the 96 Bulls right now. They'd probably still lose, but they'd at least make them feel them. And that's what I want to see, because I know when they're playing like that, the offense finds a way, whether it's through transition, whether it's through just beating the other team down over the course of the game to have that breakthrough. That's all I want to see, because I think if you play that way, you've got a 99% chance of winning on Friday, and you've got a 75% chance of winning on Sunday. And that's not even including if Momcilovic has one of those 6 of 10 games, because when those happen and you have that defense, you're probably not losing to anybody other than maybe Arizona, Duke, or Michigan.
You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see – I think this is a good opportunity. This Tennessee State game is a good opportunity for Iowa State to just build momentum. Tennessee State turns the ball over a lot. I would love to see some Taman plays, as we have coined them. I would love to see some transition threes, some swagger, like Momcilovic trailing a play, Iowa State in transition, they drop it off to him for an easy 3. Like, I want to see some of that stuff. I want to see some flash almost. Really put a stamp on this first game, build some of that momentum going into that Kentucky game, and then just let it all ride. I really believe if Iowa State plays how they should, neither of these should really be too much of a concern. I see in the comments, Steve Kemp said 2 yawners is what he'd like to see.
So.
That's what I believe we should see this week.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be stunned if there is a Washington State type game where you can't buy a bucket at the start, but just stay the course. Like this, that's where these battle scars come in. Taman Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, you guys have played in a game where you had, 8 points 10 minutes into the game and still found a way to come back and win. If that's the case, if shots aren't falling early, grind even harder defensively and don't let it get away, because that's what I remember from that Washington State game.
Yeah, lean on that defense. Yep, because it'll make some hay for you with the way that they play and the way that Taman, has a knack for getting his hands in there in front of passes and in guys' space. It'll do the work for you.
Yeah, certainly hope it's. I had an uneasy feeling in Omaha that day. It was like, is this Pitt? Is this Pitt again? Are you kidding me?
Pitt was a whole different level, man.
Yeah.
That was such a weird day.
Yeah, and that team had some extreme flaws that I just don't think this team has even close to those flaws.
Yeah.
Well, the Iowa Hawkeyes, they play also Friday night, of course. They take on Clemson, who is down, you could argue, their best or second best player in Carter Welling, a big guy down low. This game's down in Tampa, Florida, where friend of the program, Jeff Dubroff, will be covering the game.
Shout out, Jeff.
What do you make of this 8-9 matchup, and what would the impact of it be for Iowa if they were able to win it?
Well, what I think of the matchup is first to 60 wins. If you're paying attention, this is the lowest point total, I believe, of the first round. These are two teams that kind of take the air out of the ball, low possessions, slow, methodical basketball. Dare I say a little boring? I think what you need to see in the first couple of games. Can I do my seed of an idea?
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tee it up for me? I don't know if you want to do that ad read again.
Yeah, just what I said earlier. It's about to be beautiful out. So if you're actually not if I know your yard is looking yellow and disgusting right now, it doesn't have to look that way for long. Kaburski Brothers Lawn Care, always bringing our seed of an idea, and we call it that because just because you give the take now, just because you plant the seed now, doesn't mean it'll show up right now. It might take some time, and it might be a take that ages well. Mark Freund, seed of an idea.
This is my seed of an idea, and it's the concept of Iowa's last stand. I believe that this is where Bennett Sturts needs to reintroduce himself. We know that the last couple of games for Bennett Sturts have not been his best. He averaged 20 points per game during the season. His last 5, only 16. He shot 29 of 77, 37% in those games. I think we know how this game's going to go on paper, but I believe that this is a moment for Bennett Sturts to have a March type game, a legend setting type game. I don't know if it's a 30 bomb with the way that Clemson plays defense and the few possessions we're going to have in this game, but I'd love to see an efficient 25, maybe a last minute set of heroics out of Bennett Sturts, find a way to get enough out of Tavion Banks without Carter Welling in there to have that secondary scoring option, or Cooper Koch is hitting some threes, but give Bennett Sturts a chance to have some stuff schemed up for him that he can have a really big day. Same thing as Iowa State. Build some momentum. Go win that game against Clemson. I do believe they will. And then you get a Florida team that a month ago looked a little iffy. Now they're playing really well, seemingly. But they laid an egg in the SEC tournament. I do not believe Iowa will beat Florida. But I think that Iowa could spook them. I think that Iowa could give them a little bit of a sweat. And that would be another opportunity for Bennett Sturts to have a big time attention-grabbing game. I believe it ends for Iowa in the round of 32, but I believe that Ben McCullum is going to scheme up some stuff to try to get Bennett Sturts in a rhythm early and often against Clemson. A big March game incoming for Bennett. Iowa moves on and gives Florida more than I think anyone is giving them credit for. Iowa doesn't move on to the Sweet 16. Maybe it's not even a single-digit game in the end, but I think there's going to be a moment where we start to wonder if Iowa could actually do it. And that's my seed of an idea. We'll see how off I am.
That's the spirit of the rule. That's the spirit of the sponsor right there. And it does feel like that has to be Sturts' legacy. Like, is his legacy just going to be a really good to great one-year guy at Iowa, which there will be another one. But will there be another Bennett Sturts? And that comes down to him. He's had really good stretches this year. That I think back to that West Coast swing against Oregon and Washington, and what he came back and did against Northwestern. He willed them to win 2 of those games. He willed them to win all of those games. Doesn't feel like he's willed that team to a win in a while. And I would imagine a lot of that has to come down to the wear and tear of a Big Ten season. Yeah. We saw a little bit of it at the Valley, but the step from D2 to the Valley was not near as substantial as the Valley to the Big Ten. And I think he's felt the weight of being a first option, and at some points the only option, which is it's a massive distinction.
Yep.
You've got a week off before this. He knows this is it. He's going to go to the NBA. He's going to have a good career. He's going to be a good role player in the NBA. But this is how he could be remembered. And I agree with you. It is time. They go as he goes. They're not going to – I don't think they'll beat Clemson if he scores 18 points. I think he's going to have to score 25, and they certainly won't beat Florida unless he has one of those all-time games that would cement him in Hawkeye lore forever.
I think it's all there for Iowa to have that type of narrative unfold. Obviously, Florida's interior depth.
Yeah, it's a bad matchup.
It's a bad matchup. They don't. I do not believe they have what they need to actually pull that upset off. But I do think they could scare them. I do think they could scare the Gators. Banks is going to be huge in really both these games. Fulgaris is going to need to show up. You're going to need some threes from Koch, but I do believe, like I said, that McCollum is scheming some stuff. I think he's got some tricks up his sleeve that we're gonna see something out of Bennett Sturts that makes him potentially one of the stars of this tournament, at least the stars of the first two rounds.
Yeah, look what they did to Michigan a couple weeks ago. They put the fear of life into them, and they scared the hell out of me at Hilton Coliseum this year.
Yeah.
I wasn't deleting tweets, but I was looking back. I'm like, oh man.
Uh-oh.
All right. And Iowa State, of course, came back. It does feel a little too perfect of a setup where it feels like pretty much my entire time working in local media. It feels like every time Iowa gets this close to some big win in either football or men's basketball, and every time the football's pulled from them like Charlie Brown, would this be the time? I don't think so, but you do make a good case that it is an Iowa team with nothing to lose. And as weird as it is, what I loved about TJ Otzelberger's first team was it felt like even when they were struggling that entire year, and even when they got in the top 10, it felt like that group played with nothing to lose the entire time. Like it never felt like they weren't having fun or playing with house money. And it feels like this Iowa team should be playing like that more, and I haven't really felt it all year. Like even that Nebraska win where they were underdogs, it still felt like they were playing so tight and so tense. And I haven't seen it from them where they're just having a ton of fun. Maybe what it takes is going up against a 1 seed and knowing that they've got an opportunity to play spoiler, and that's what could flip that season around.
Well, and you never know in March, too. Sometimes it helps to just get out of your conference, play somebody new, play somebody you haven't seen, play somebody who plays a lot like you. Obviously, Clemson is about as close to Iowa as the ACC's got to offer. So, it's a good opportunity to just hit the reset button. You're in the tournament now. You had to get in to do anything about it. And I know that some Hawkeye fans maybe might not be happy with just being there, because that is the expectation that McCollum has kind of set for this program. But you're there now. You have a chance to hit that reset button, go get a win, make everybody feel really good about the way that this season has unfolded before it probably ends in the second round. But I still think one NCAA tournament win and a decent showing against Florida, and Hawkeye fans leave this season feeling like that was a success.
Yeah. And if it goes the other way and they look against Clemson like they did against Ohio State for 35 minutes, or how they looked at Penn State, then it does become a concern on, like, yeah, this is a great year, but we just lost a top 20 pick, and how are we going to replace that guy? And what's this look like? So it is a good point in the tournament that it doesn't have to be Final Four or bust. There are massive stakes when it comes to, do you win one game or no games, especially year one of a coach.
And look, we have to be prepared for the possibility that Iowa just doesn't play very well on Friday night. I was pretty hard on them the last time I was on this show. I'm trying to be a little more optimistic this time around. But we do have to be prepared for that possibility that this game looks like the Maryland game or the Penn State game or the Ohio State game, especially when you consider the opponent. But I don't know. I trust Ben McCollum. I know Brad Brownell's a really good coach. He's going to have that team ready. But I trust Ben McCollum to have something, I keep using that phrase, up his sleeve for this matchup.
Yeah, I I think you're right. He's been in enough of these big games where the D2 national championship, say what you want about it, I'm sure it feels pretty dang big when you're in those shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you don't have the number of eyeballs on you as you do in the NCAA tournament, like a championship's a championship, and McCollum has
Hell yeah.
nothing but experience in those spots.
He knows how to win in these moments. Yeah. Enough said, right?
The Iowa women, we're probably going to spend the least amount of time on them as anybody because they're going to kill Fairleigh Dickinson. That's a given in front of a sold-out crowd. And then they're going to get the winner of Arizona State and Virginia against Georgia.
Yes.
Which I've seen Arizona State in person this year. Very well coached. You can tell they're a program on the up and up. There's no way that they'll be able to compete with Iowa and Carver Hawkeye if they can get past Virginia and Georgia. Plus, their coach isn't there right now. She's sick. Yeah, so that's a whole nother element. To me, this feels like a no-doubter that Iowa advances to the Sweet 16, and if they don't, then that's where the majority of the conversation starts on what happened. And I don't anticipate that.
I feel the same way about the Iowa women as I do about the Iowa State men. Neither of these opponents.
If the game was at Hilton, is the biggest difference.
Pretty much, yeah. No, the neither of these opponents scare me that much. Georgia, I think they started didn't they start the year like 14, 15-0, something like that?
Yeah.
And they've tailed off. They've played a lot of ranked teams, and they're not very good against ranked teams. I know rankings are just a number, but it does kind of indicate quality of opponent. And Georgia just doesn't have that many quality wins on their resume. It doesn't look, I can't say I'm a Georgia women's basketball expert or anything like that, but looking at their schedule, nothing really stands out to me. If Iowa leans into what Iowa does, and that's, mix it up with Ava Hayden, Hannah Stulke, and get some good looks for chit chat. No concerns about what's going to happen this weekend. It should be two pretty comfortable wins.
So Georgia played Iowa in this very game. I believe it was a 2-10 game a couple years ago. But I remember the concern going into that was that Iowa struggled with athletic teams. It doesn't feel like that's the case as much anymore.
Well, look at what they did in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it feels like they're way more equipped to deal with the bigger athletic teams right now. So I have no concern. I know it's bad insight, but I don't see this team losing in front of a sold-out Carver crowd against two very inferior opponents when they've been really dang good at Carver this year.
Absolutely.
And they should be going forward.
And we know how much of an advantage Carver is for that program as well. Same thing as Iowa State. I'd love to see Iowa just beat the piss out of this Fairleigh Dickinson team and just build some good juju going in. I'm interested in what happens once they get out of their pod. TCU could be waiting on the other side there. That's really interesting to me. There's a lot of intrigue. They drew the right 1 seed. Look, we all believe that the 1 seeds in women's basketball, and the proof is in the pudding that they are 3 steps above everybody else. But if you had to get one, they got the right one. And so get out of Iowa City, get onto the regionals, roll the dice, see what happens.
You don't want UConn, you don't want UCLA, you don't want Texas. You really don't want South Carolina either, but if you have to choose one, you're taking South Carolina.
They drew the right 1 seed, and it's going to, hopefully mean that they'll have a seat at the table. It feels a little bit to me like my first year at WHO, we hoofed it out to Greensboro for the Iowa women when Gustafson was at the height of her powers. And they won that Sweet 16 game against, I believe it was NC State. And then they just got run off the floor against Baylor, who at the time obviously was much more of a power.
Still
They've
good.
they're still good, taking a step back from where they were at that point. That's kind of what it feels like to me. But hey, again, like AD said about the Big Ten tournament, get to UCLA and just play the game. See what happens. We know it didn't go their way, but if you can get to South Carolina, leave it all out there. You never know. It's March.
Well, speaking of not wanting the UConn women,
This hurts, man.
yeah, and I know like there's been some people that have been complaining about a bad draw, and are they just doing this because of TV ratings? You get the sport's biggest brand against one of the sport's most recognizable stars. At the end of the day, if you don't lose at Cincinnati, if you don't blow a double-digit lead to TCU, blow a game at home against Oklahoma State, you're not in this spot.
Lose to Arizona State in the Big 12 tournament, maybe.
Be a total no-show in the
Yeah.
Big 12 tournament against Arizona State. So while yes, that's weighing me down, I wouldn't say that is what is actually weighing me down, courtesy of Siouxland Scale. And for me, it's much more of a big picture thing on what's weighing me down from SiouxlandScale.com. Sales, installation, repair, calibration, and rail scale testing services. What's weighing me down is that, barring a miracle that I looked up the odds would be greater than the 1980 USA Olympic hockey team beating the Soviet Union, Audie Crooks and Addie Brown will enter their senior year not going to a Sweet 16. Rewind 2 years from now, or 2 years ago, when they have that awesome game against Maryland where Audie scores 40 and they follow it up and scare the absolute life out of Stanford. And Emily Ryan plays the game of her life. They take that game to overtime. The sky was the limit for this team, not only last year, but this year. And it felt at points this year, especially after that Cyhawk game. Wow, this could be Fenley's best team yet. This could be Fenley's first Elite Eight team in a long time. And it hasn't been that. You can blame some injuries. You can really put blame everywhere. You can blame the defense. But at the end of the day, it's not the blame that's weighing me down. It's just the fact that it's not going to happen this year, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on those women to do it next year and to leave a stronger impact and legacy than just some good stats, some great stats, some fun games at Hilton, but nonetheless pretty empty when you look at it from a large-scale perspective.
Dare I say that this is a sneakily big weekend for Bill Fenley? You have a better pulse on this than I do these days, of course. I don't think that he needs to be thinking about, the next steps or anything like that, but you got to win this first game. You have to get to UConn, I think. And can you imagine what a letdown that would feel like on top of all the other letdowns this year to not get that game against Syracuse? You have to have it. And I take it one step further in that you have to give this fan base and this program something in that UConn game. It doesn't have to be the whole shebang. We know they're almost certainly not going to win it, but you got to look half decent against them. You have to leave this season with some kind of positive viewpoint. But I think it starts with that Syracuse game. You have to have that one. I think it's really, really important. And then, try again next year. Bring this group back and give it another go next year. But I can't say it enough. I think they have to have this Syracuse game.
No doubt, you have to. Other than the play-in game last year, this team has won one tournament game since they lost to Creighton in the Sweet 16. And that was also out in Greensboro, if I believe. Or it was somewhere in that part of the country. And that was a double-digit seed, Creighton. So, first round exit last year, their best result was definitely 2 years ago when they were this close to beating Stanford in Cameron Brink. But before that, lost to 12 seed Toledo. Before that, you lost to Creighton in that Sweet 16 game. You can't be one and done again. You can't go all the way out there. Like you said, you have to give a reason for your fan base to be bought in next year and to believe that it won't be the same old, same old. That they ran this roster back and brought in a dynamic point guard that by all accounts has lived up to it. Like I think Jada Williams has been really good, and she certainly went through some of her lulls, but she's not been the problem, which begs the question to me, what has been the problem? And they're going to have a good showing in the NCAA tournament for fans to have a little bit of hope coming into next year.
I mean, just to restate, yes, this team ran into a lot of unfortunate things that some of which were out of their control, right? You had some bad losses. You had a really key injury that bogged you down for quite some time. But you flamed out in the Big 12 tournament against a team you beat by 30 a couple weeks prior. You have to go get some morsel of good. Look, they should beat that Syracuse team. Syracuse has that one post player and not a whole lot else.
And they're 1-7 against quad one teams.
There you go. On paper, this should not be a close game, but Iowa State should go win that game, stamp it, and then I don't know what it needs to look like against UConn. Maybe you have a better idea, but I think you got to at least look good for a half. Try to limit the turnovers. Try to get Audie involved, and see how long you can hang on.
What I think you need in a UConn game, you need to make Gino call one timeout. You need to have a run where it's just like Gino goes back to the huddle and yells at his team, "What are you guys doing?" That can be to get up 6. That could be to cut a 12-point deficit to a 4-point deficit. You need to make a run that you can go to commercial and you can hop on Twitter and fans are excited and be like, okay, this is really impressive. Yep. It's not realistic. We all watched what UCLA just did to Iowa. It's not realistic at all to expect to win or even to be within 15 of this game. But it is realistic to expect your fight to show up and be like, you know what? This team gave their all today and at least made UConn think for a second that if we don't sharpen up, we could be in a game. That's what I want to see.
I like that. I like that take. That's, whatever it is, we need to see something. It can't be you're down by 30 midway through the second quarter. It just can't. It can't.
Well, I know what's weighing you down, and it's not as tall of a mountain for the UNI Panthers to climb, but it's a pretty tough task, a pretty tough matchup for the Panthers against Slick Rick Pitino and the St. John's Johnnies.
Yeah, this is what's weighing me down, Siouxland Scales. I know, Jake, you and the thread that we're in with Jeff, you guys were the first ones I texted when I saw UNI's name come across the board. I just said, "Oh, this sucks, man." It's not a great matchup for UNI. I know we're gonna have Josh in here in a minute to talk about it, but it doubly sucks for me. And what's weighing on me a little bit more, and this is a little outside the realm of the locality of Iowa, but I'm a Big East guy. I went to a Big East school. The Big East was bad this year, man.
Yeah.
UConn struggled down the stretch. St. John's had their moments. Villanova was very average. And those are the only 3 teams in the tournament. I need a showing from the Big East in this tournament. And I hate that it would have to come at the expense partially of Northern Iowa. But more importantly for the Panthers, what in the hell are they going to do against Zuby Ejiofor?
I don't know.
What are they going to do? This is going to have to be just the game of Will Hornset's life.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I don't know what they do. I love you. We know what UNI does in March. We know that they are capable of pulling upsets. UNI has what you need in March. They have great defense, and they have a point guard that can take over a game. Those are the two biggest things you need in March. But, man, I just don't have a damn clue what they are going to do against the interior forces that St. John's has. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see what Jake's got for him. But it's Pitino, and it's the Big East Player of the Year, who's just a bully.
He's a monster.
That's what's weighing me down, man. This is such a tough matchup for UNI.
You just wish they would have gotten Wisconsin. Like, what you need for these upsets, you need oil and water. You need opposites to contrast. And High Point's not going to beat Wisconsin either, because High Point's going to try and go do exactly what Wisconsin does. You need an ugly team to go ugly up a game against a pretty team, or you need a pretty team to go make things pretty against an ugly team. Like, you'd almost wish High Point was playing St. John's so they had more of a chance, and UNI was getting Wisconsin. But let's bring in our Valley expert, Mr. Josh Betts. Betts on Sports was down at Arch Madness. I might have been in the very same hotel that I'm in, the Hilton by the Arch.
There you go.
In the Media Hotel.
I was not in that hotel, Jake, but I'm certainly familiar with that area where you are. Mark, great to see you, and Jake, good to be back on as always.
It's good to see you, my man. Are you as down in the dumps about the Panthers and their draw as Mark is?
Am I as down in the dumps? No. But I'll say this. I would guess the three of us can agree that St. John's as a 5 seed, in my mind, guys, that's an underseeded. St. John's team.
For
no
sure.
Question. And, Mark, you hit the nail on the head. It does feel like a career night out of Will Hornseth is probably needed if they want to stay in this game. But I'll go back to another point, Mark, that you mentioned. UNI's defense, nation's leading scoring defense. Mm-hmm. The defense traveled to St. Louis for Arch Madness, and I think it will travel going into Friday night. All that being said, St. John's is obviously unlike any team that they've played all season long. And the Panthers have not seen a player like Zuby Ejiofor. I can't even think, guys, of a Valley player that would reach as a comp. Fred King at Murray State, maybe.
He was the guy I thought of.
But even that's not an entirely accurate comp. It doesn't feel like.
Because Zuby's more athletic than Fred King is.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, I love UNI's defense. I think St. John's plays with pace. You're going to have to find a way to slow them down, and UNI certainly can do that on defense. But I think one of the problems is UNI fouls a lot, and we're not talking just about Will Hornseth needing the game of his life on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe even more so on the defensive side of the ball. Josh, what do you think about his ability to stand in there against an All-American type player?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great challenge, right? And Will, in my mind, made some strides on the defensive end. I think maybe sometimes, some fans that don't follow UNI as close as others may or may not remember or know Will Hornseth is a sophomore. And, started and played, contributed heavily last year in his freshman year. He's made all the jumps that you would hope a player would from his freshman to sophomore year in terms of weight room, build, improvement at both ends in terms of on the court. But he has not seen a player like this, like we've said. He's shown the ability against the physical bigs of the Valley to stand in there and get.
And there are some good ones.
And get vertical and be physical, but we mentioned kind of the loose Fred King comp, but also in so many ways that's not even close to Zuby Ejiofor.
Right.
I guess what's the path? It's March for a reason. Upsets are upsets for a reason because we don't expect them. If we're doing buckets next week and we're talking about another Ben Jacobson masterclass, what had to go right for UNI for that to happen?
So when they've been at their best this season, guys, when they've struggled, it has been the absence of a consistent third scorer. When they got to St. Louis, won 4 games in 4 days, they had 3 and 4 guys in double figures offensively. I think on the offensive side, you need that kind of game. You need good games out of the 2 guys Mark mentioned, Trey Campbell, Will Hornseth. I think you need a 15 to 18 point game probably out of Leon Bond. But the X factor for this UNI team is a guy that we have not brought up in these first couple minutes. It's Tristan
I know
Smith.
who you're going to say. Yes,
It's
sir.
Tristan Smith. And you talk about, and we've talked about the physicality that Zuby Ejiofor brings. It's Tristan Smith that can match that closely. So, does that mean defensively that Tristan Smith starts the game on Zuby Ejiofor? We'll see. I think it's possible. Conventional wisdom with Ben Jacobson-led teams, and this year is no different. In the case of this year's team, Trey Campbell is on St. John's largest key offensive player. Now, do I think we see Trey? Do I think we see Trey on Zuby Ejiofor defensively? My mind says maybe not, but I would also tell you guys it wouldn't shock me if he has a few possessions guarding him defensively. We don't see Ben Jacobson play much other than man-to-man defense. I don't think we've seen a handful of possessions zone this year, and I don't know this is the game to go and break that out, right? But collective offensive effort, and I'm not sure I'm sugarcoating it, guys, to say they might need their defensive game of the year to be competitive and have a chance to win.
Yeah. Josh, if you had a chance to talk to the team yet, I'm guessing you did after the Selection Sunday show. We know UNI is ripe for upsets in March. I know that's not something that Ben Jacobson is going to talk about. He doesn't seem like that kind of guy, but there is a precedent set here. Are you feeling any March juju coming from these guys?
So Sunday after the selection show, we just spoke to Coach Jake. It was maybe a 2-minute and change kind of session.
Okay.
I'm sure, as you both know, Jake, for what you're doing, well, both your time in TV, and Jake, what you're doing now with Chris Williams and the great team at Cycle and Fanatic. When you talk to a coach after or players after a selection show, obviously without seeing tape, you don't know much. I would imagine, particularly in the case of TJ Otzelberger and players with Tennessee State. Shifting gears back to UNI, obviously Jake's been around, I'm sure knows what to expect maybe schematically from Coach Patino and team, but obviously not having watched tape as of when we talked to him on Sunday. Watching the media availability from Monday that was done via Zoom because of weather, the common theme that came up was length, physicality. Zuby Ejiofor's name did come up, I do believe, at one point. You mentioned it, Mark. Is there a precedent there? Sure, there's multiple examples. This one, though, the recipe to pull this upset feels nothing like, in my mind, any of the previous ones, simply because, and in my mind, it's the underseeded factor with this St. John's team.
Yeah. Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. It feels like just about the worst opponent you could have drawn. Um, and I know we're talking about a lot about St. John's interior, but they got a point guard by the name of Bryce Hopkins, transferred from Providence, all league player, incredible player. Yeah, you're gonna need everything. But like Jake and I talked about before you came on here, Josh, as you know, you have the things you need in March. You've got great defense, and you've got a really good point guard. You've got two really good guards, frankly, obviously with Leon Bond as well. So, look, we won't say that it's not going to happen. I have a hard time seeing the path forward, but boy, I hope I'm wrong. That's all I'm going to say.
And it's interesting.
And we need that Kansas rematch, don't we? We need that Kansas rematch.
Your buddy Kevin Harlan's on the call, Josh. Like, at some point, does fate step in and fix the rebounding margin?
If you're asking me to put my personal thoughts into it, obviously I'm excited. My buddy Kevin Harlan is calling the games in San Diego. Obviously, great friend of mine, and I think everyone would agree, one of the best in the business. And you mentioned Mark, Bryce Hopkins there. The Bryce Hopkins Trey Campbell matchup, that's probably the best matchup next to whoever guards Zuby Ejiofor, I think, in this game.
Yeah, get the popcorn ready for that. If we could get some kind of a shoot off between those guys, man, that would be entertainment factor would be high.
And I do wonder from a UNI fan standpoint if they might have rather the team been seeded 13 simply for the chance to draw Kansas in the first round. I know I'm drawing a blank on which of the national bracketologists it was. Mike DeCourcy for Fox, maybe. I believe in his final bracket, Saturday or Sunday, had UNI at 13 against Kansas. And certainly for UNI fans, if they find a way to pull the upset, the excitement level for that game on Sunday will be quite a sight to behold, I think.
Through the roof.
Well, Josh, thanks for joining us, man. Hopefully next week we're previewing a Sweet 16 with you. How's that sound?
Yeah, it'd be I'd be a little bit surprised, of course, but I obviously always happy to join you guys. Jake, what UNAD have built with this show this year, and obviously kind of having Mark as the main pinch hitter has been a lot of fun. Certainly just another great show in the Iowa Everywhere staple that Chris Williams and Chris Hassel have built.
Appreciate you, Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Bets on Sports on X. Check out his live coverage of the game. Always providing great takes. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
I appreciate it as always, guys. Thanks.
Great to see you, Josh. Take care, man.
Always great to hear from Mr. Betts. A great Valley expert right there.
It would be
Just
great
sucks.
if they could. Yeah, it would be great if they could pull something off. Hey, Miami University is up 9.
I saw that.
SMU at halftime.
Yeah, I saw that. That makes me want to get to our buzzard beater, brought to you by Buzzard Billy's, so I can get down to the hotel bar and watch the end of this game. That's the goal. So ideally, I'd love to go and do every single one of these games, but it doesn't feel realistic. By every game, I mean like every men's game. So we're just gonna stick to the in-state games on our buzzard beater, brought to you by Buzzard Billy's. Talk about a great spot to go check out games this weekend. Tons of TVs, great appetizers, good beer, cold drinks. It's going to be nice weather. You just get that feeling if you want to go downtown once the weather gets nice again. So if you're in the area, stop by Buzzard Billy's and check it out.
And a personal favorite of the Murphy family.
It is. Yeah, you'll probably run into Keith and Jenny.
Probably.
Now that they're downtown residents. Should we even talk about Iowa State, Tennessee State, or would it be a waste of our time to chalk up a win?
How about this? Do they cover?
Ooh, 24.5 was the number that I had down.
Mm-hmm.
It could have. I think they do.
I think so too.
It feels like I will never say that. It's irresponsible to say that publicly that there's free money. But my philosophy was always like, if Iowa State can get these cupcake. I feel so disrespectful calling a team that made the NCAA tournament a cupcake. But
disrespecting Nolan Smith over there.
Those early games at Hilton Coliseum, I always felt like if you could get them at anything shorter than like 35, you're going to win them more often than not. And it feels to me that if Iowa State plays with any sense of urgency and pace, they'll win this game by 30.
The difference here is that they don't need to run up the score for their metrics.
Exactly.
Like they do at Hilton. So, that's where it, maybe a little closer to the number.
Keep tame and fresh.
Yeah, for sure.
We don't need to do point spread for Iowa Clemson, right?
No.
This can just be a pick 'em up. I'll take Iowa. I still don't feel great about it. I think you swayed me a little bit. I might have to change my bracket. It's not completely done yet.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down there. I'm going Iowa. I'm taking Iowa to win this game. I think they're going to have the best player on the floor, and if it's now or never for Bennett Sturts and Ben McCollum and the Hawkeyes, I think they get it done.
Do the UNI Panthers cover the 10.5 points for the Friday night tip at 6:10 on CBS?
I'm going to regretfully say no. I think it'll be inside the number for a good chunk of the game, and I think there's a chance the wheels come off at the end.
Yeah, this feels like a not enough bodies type game where you, just like Josh said, you might be able to give Zuby Ejiofor all he can handle for 15 minutes. Can you do it for 35? Can you do it for 40? It feels unlikely. I hope the Cats prove me wrong and have some more historic March moments.
If Trey Campbell's got some more March magic in him, we'll see where
it's
it
now
lands.
or never.
Yep.
The Iowa women, 31.5 against Fairleigh Dickinson. I think that's the same exact spread as if the Iowa football team were to play Fairleigh Dickinson, if they have a football team. I'll go with a 50-50 shot on that. It's a lot of points, but sure.
It's
why
a lot
not?
of points.
Why
yeah,
not?
What the hell? You know how Seth Davis does his Sharpie? I think we can already Sharpie Iowa on to the next round. We'll see if it's Georgia, Arizona State, or Virginia.
And then the Cyclone women, they're favored by 7.5 points against Syracuse. I definitely don't feel comfortable with the 7.5 at all.
Really?
I think they win. I think they win, but man, they've had almost 2 weeks off. They've had 2 weeks off since they lost Arizona State, and that was a sour taste. I think they win, but I also thought they'd find a way last year to beat Michigan. I thought they'd beat Toledo. I think they win, but I don't feel great.
Syracuse does not have to travel as far. I don't know if that's a factor in any way. I don't know. I feel confident that Iowa State's going to win comfortably, but I felt that way about Arizona State in the Big 12 tournament too.
Yeah.
So I'll pick the Cyclones, but I'll align with you in that I don't feel 100% confident about it. It's a must-win game.
They might have more fans there than Syracuse, even though Syracuse is like 45 minutes away.
Honestly, they probably will. They probably will have more fans there. Do we want to do, Jake, before we go, do we want to do Final Fours? Or are you prepared yet?
I've got mine.
Okay.
I'll let you go first.
I've got mine too. And boy, I'm about to make some people mad. On the men's side, I have St. John's in the Final Four.
Really? Okay.
I do not believe in Duke. Duke historically, when they have one player that they rely on so heavily, historically has not fared very well in the tournament. I know Cooper Flagg last year was the exception, but I don't know why. I just don't believe in Duke. I'm going St. John's in the East. I've got Florida coming out of what would that be? The South, right?
Yep.
I've got, let's see, Midwest. I did pick Iowa State.
Okay.
I had Virginia beating Iowa State in my gut bracket. This is not your daddy's Virginia team. You got to look out for that Virginia squad.
They got some guards.
Just putting that out there right now. That is not going to be a cakewalk. But I think if Iowa State can get past Virginia, assuming it's them, I like the Michigan matchup, man. I just do. I think Iowa State wins that game. And then up there in the West, I got Arizona. Like you said, best team all season. And I do have Arizona over Florida in the national championship game.
So I've got Michigan State coming out of the I've gone back and forth between them and Duke nonstop. And every time that I try to switch my pick, I'm like, this is the year where it feels like Izzo shouldn't make a run, which makes me feel like he will make a run. And that's my very backwards reasoning.
Law of averages, right?
And then my other backwards reasoning is the law of averages, where I don't think there will be 3 Big 12 teams that make the Final Four, but I think there will be 2. And I think if you can get 2 of your 4 Final Four rights, you're going to be in a really good position for a lot of your brackets. So I'm just going to go Houston, Arizona, Iowa State. I think of those 3, I'm certainly most confident in Arizona. I would say I'm the second most confident in Iowa State and the third most confident in Houston. The factor of Houston getting Florida in the Elite Eight in Houston with the national championship rematch bodes well in my eyes, but I also think Florida could also just out-physical them, which sounds weird to say about a Kelvin Sampson team.
Florida is the team I'm least confident in. Well, actually, if I'm saying that, it is St. John's, because I'm just out on a limb there.
Yeah.
But Florida, I know I was kind of afraid of them early, about a week ago, but I don't know. They seem like they could slip up like they did against Vanderbilt. I would love to see Houston get to the Final Four. Big Kelvin Sampson fan. That game at Hilton this year, holy crap, man! I was there. I know you were too.
Game of the year
electric.
before Iowa State, Arizona.
Absolutely electric. That game was incredible. Would love to see that play out, like you said. But I love this, man. It's March. Oh, and then on the women's side, I got all the 1 seeds.
Yeah, same.
I got UConn winning it all. I don't really know how much more needs to be said there.
Yeah, I actually had when Williams and I were in Tucson, we were joking about it, and he gave me a NASCAR winner. And I was thinking, what if I just parlayed this with the UConn women to win the national championship at -300? And I did it, but the NASCAR driver didn't win. It was like a long shot NASCAR driver. So like, if he wins, then I'll have a massive interest in the UConn women not getting upset.
That would have backfired on you, knowing what we know now.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, I'm excited. I cannot wait to watch games all day. I'll find time to watch games tomorrow. You know how these off days go at the NCAA tournament, but certainly the evening slate, I will be completely locked into it, and I'm going to go get locked in to Miami against SMU. This has been Mark Freund and Jake Brend in the Channel Seed Studios on Buckets. Freund, thanks for hopping in.
You bet, man.
Thanks for all the good work this year. And I don't know if you'll be back on this year, but you'll be back on at some point. We've got a couple weeks left. Who knows what AD and I have in store, but it's always good to have Freund right off the bench and coming out of the bullpen. Thanks for tuning in and making this show pretty freaking awesome.